As we continue our deep dive into Pete Prisco's Better Than team, we turn our attention to the offensive side of the ball. Players like Georgia running back James Cook, Nevada quarterback Carson Strong, and Jalen Tolbert, the receiver from South Alabama. All these players and more should be getting more attention. That is according to our Pete Prisco. As we take a look at the offensive players on this list, to really learn more about all these guys, you got to check out CBSSports.com, but we're lucky enough to be joined by Mr. Prisco now in order to break down some of these guys a little bit deeper. So we're going to welcome back our Pete Prisco and Charles Davis. We're looking at this Better Than team. All right, players who Prisco feels are better than what they're viewed. Let's keep it rolling. We're starting off with quarterback Carson Strong from Nevada. Led the Mountain West in passing yards last season, 4,175 passing touchdowns, 36 there. The kid is impressive. What makes him better than others, Pete?
Well, he could spin it. I mean, you look at all these quarterbacks, and I know everybody raves about, Malik Willis and his arm strength, but this kid can throw it and really rip it, and he's got a nice touch as well. And when you watch his games, he anticipates, he gets the ball out, he's got a good receiver who's going to get drafted, he got a good tight end who's going to get drafted, but he made all the throws. The only concern with him is the mobility, and everybody says it. Look, he doesn't move that well, and here's why. He had 2 major knee surgeries, and there are teams that are concerned about his knee. And in fact, you talk to some teams, and some teams will take him off their board because of that knee. But he took the brace off at the end of last season. I think he struggled a little bit from a mental standpoint with it, particularly at the Senior Bowl. But I think he's one of those kids, if you draft him in the 3rd or 4th round and give him a little time, a year maybe, and then let him play, I think he's going to be a starting quarterback in this league. And you keep hearing rumblings that the Pittsburgh Steelers are eyeing Carson Strong. He was in there for a visit. He's a big, strong, physical guy. They love those kind of quarterbacks. They had that in Ben Roethlisberger. So keep an eye on the Steelers and Carson Strong. I think he's a guy who's going to start in this league. He can really spin it. If that knee was healthy, he might be the first quarterback taken.
All right, Charles, agree or disagree? What do you think about Carson Strong?
Well, Pete, I think the first quarterback that would have been taken this year should have been a guy who should have gone back to school to Stanford. And he's a starting quarterback with the Houston Texans named Davis Mills. But that's another subject for another day, right? So getting into Carson Strong, everything you talked about in evidence when you watch him. You go to the Senior Bowl and you see him throw the football. You watch him at the Combine throwing the deep ball. No one has a better, stronger arm than Carson Strong. All of the issues are true, though. The knee injuries, multiple during that time, during his time, starting in high school. Okay, he did have great guys to throw it to, and he connected well with them. In fact, they were roommates. Romeo Dubs, wide receiver, Cole Turner, tight end. They called themselves the Three Amigos, and boy, did they produce. Where I worry about him is when things break down. Total lack of movement in and out of the pocket. Can he climb? Can he do the things that you need? He gets rid of the ball well. He can play from the pocket. My biggest concern, the way the game is going right now, things have to be right for him. We saw this with Mac Jones at the end of last year. If everything's not right, he can't make it right just yet. I know Mac's working on that right now, and he has a little bit better mobility than Carson Strong. So that is the biggest concern. But I will agree with you on this one, Pete. If they could redshirt him, find a way to get that knee stronger, get a little extra movement in him, he's got an opportunity. But it's got to go to a team, as you said, like Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger. Although, let's face it, when Big Ben was younger, he could move it around pretty well, too.
That he could. And Carson Strong definitely receiving some attention right now. But coming out of high school, he only received 1 college offer, Nevada. That's where it ended up. We'll see what happens next for him. All right, next up, we're looking at James Cook out of Georgia, brother of Vikings running back Dalvin Cook. So, Pete, what is special about James?
Everybody's looking for that running back that can do so many different things. You line them up wide, you get them in space, catching the football. It's an air game now. You want to spread teams out. And yet, you still have to be able to run the football. I think James Cook can do both. He's a home run hitter when he gets the ball in his arms, running the football, but he's outstanding catching the football as well. He's not unlike his brother. He's not as good as his brother, but the skill set is similar. And I think he's one of those guys, when you start looking at the running back class, and it's a good running back class, you start talking about the third and the fourth and the fifth round, you're going to see a lot of running backs go off the board. He's going to be one of them, and the team that gets him is going to get an explosive runner who can also catch the football. I think those guys have great value the way the game is played nowadays.
Pete, I see him as a space guy, and that's where I think he will have his greatest value. Can he run it? Absolutely. We're seeing that. But last year in the NFL, the top 10 rushers weighed 220 or above. We're starting to get those thumpers back because the defenses are getting smaller. But where is it with James Cook's value? You mentioned it. Get the ball to him in space, throw the ball to him. He could easily catch 60 balls next year if he gets full-time work, because that's what he does well. You've turned on the tape. You saw him against my Tennessee Volunteers, split out wide and running a route like a wide receiver and beating them to the end zone. Yeah, I saw it. It hurt my heart. This guy can play. I agree absolutely. He is not his brother. To me, he is not Dalvin, because Dalvin is a rocked-up guy who can run it inside and run it with some thump. But in the space, catch it out of the backfield, there is value for James Cook, especially starting with day 3.
Cook had a career-high 112 receiving yards in the Orange Bowl, showing off what he could do during bowl season. All right, how about a player like Max Borge, running back out of Washington State? Why did he make the better than list, Pete?
Now, here's a down-the-line guy, and I'm really going to 7th round, 6th round if he gets drafted, because here's a guy that can do the same type of stuff. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. If you put on his tape at Washington State, all he did was catch passes out of the backfield and carry the football between the tackles. He was their top running back for a couple years. He's a productive player. He's tough. He's physical. The one problem with him, the one major problem with him, is his body. And can he hold up? Because he had some issues with injuries at Washington State, and that's the concern when you talk to some of the teams and some of the scouts. But as far as being a productive runner in a big-time conference and a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, that's what Max Borge can do. I think if you can get him in the 6th or 7th round, you might have a chance. If you play him on special teams early, you might have a chance to get yourself a situational back for later on down the line, maybe in his 2nd or 3rd year.
Hey, we always try and come up with comps for guys, right, when they come out. I watch him play. I see Zach Zenner. You remember when he came out and played with the Detroit Lions? I see Ryan Nall, who's been playing with the Chicago Bears over the last few seasons. There's another young man in this draft by the name of Xander Horvath at Purdue. They're all very similar backs in terms of their production and in terms of how they run the football with authority and with force. That's what Max Borge does. Now, you mentioned his body and holding up. Pass protection's not his forte, okay? So when he's in the ball game, it is what we call scat protection. Get the back out, get him into a route, get him away, because he's not going to hold up very well trying to keep his quarterback upright. But the way he plays the game, the way he plays so hard, and the way he plays with such love for the game, I'm with you on that. Someone's going to take a look at him late on day 3 and add him to their ball club, and then they're going to have trouble getting rid of him when he runs down on special teams.
That passion shines through. Now, up next, the 2021 Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year in Jalen Tolbert out of South Alabama there. Pete, why is he a standout?
Well, this is going to really hurt Charles.
Oh, sorry.
All you have to do is put on the tape against Tennessee. He dominated that game. He was unstoppable. They couldn't cover him. He's a big physical receiver, but he's faster than you think. He plays faster than his 40 time. And against the Volunteers, he kept making play after play after play. And he has a bad quarterback, by the way. And that tells you the type of player he is. I love this guy. In talking to scouts and a lot of receiver coaches in this league, he's going to go higher than you think. He's a physical guy. Everybody's looking for that kind of receiver to go with their speed guy. I think he's going to be a productive NFL player. And again, I hate to say it, but pop on the Tennessee tape. You'll see what I think about him.
Pete, he played really well in that game. What did he have, like 7 catches, 143 yards, a touchdown? He played well. Now, my Volunteers put 50-plus on USA, so he had a lot of opportunities on offense to go ahead and catch the football. But that's another deal. Look, everything you described about him comes out when you pop on the tape or you see him in person. I got a chance to watch him in person at the Senior Bowl, got a chance to stand next to him and kind of take my measure, what they used to call, what's he look like on the hoof? He is an imposing, impressive-looking receiver. Other guys like him in this draft. He's not as big as Drake London, not as big as David Bell from Purdue, Drake London out of USC, but a similar play style. may not blow you away blazing, but he's still plenty fast enough. And if you want to play the game above the rim, like we like to talk about it, like a basketball game, Jalen Tolbert's up for that all time long. He's the one standing in line saying, I got next. And he has something that he wants to prove to people coming out of USA. Remember, he could have come out last year, stayed in school to keep working on his craft. I think it was a great move for him. That'll bump him up in the draft. I'm looking for him to be gone before day 2 is over, which is rounds 2 and 3.
Yeah, it's a good thing he stayed third in FBS in receiving yards per game last season. And I love that you're always just making sure you're representing Tennessee there, making sure that they know that they're loved. We all know it. All right, let's talk about a receiver in Tae Kwon Thornton next. From Baylor, tied second in the Big 12 in receiving touchdowns with 10 last season. So talk to me about Thornton, Pete.
Well, he's a blazing fast receiver. I mean, he ran 4.28 at the Combine, fastest time at the Combine. At one point, they thought he broke the record at the Combine. Didn't quite work out that way. But, boy, he can flat out fly. And he plays to that speed. Sometimes you get speed guys, and you go, wow, he's a flyer on the clock, but he doesn't play to that speed. He does. And I think he's one of those guys, when you watch him, he runs away. It's an effortless glide when he catches the football. You put the West Virginia tape on. He took a little pass in the middle of the field and ran away from the entire defense for a long touchdown. I think that type of speed has great value in the NFL. He's also a pretty big receiver, which you like to see. I think he's going to be able to handle, the press and the bump. He needs to get a little bigger in terms of his body. But he's one of those guys, he will put the fear of God in defensive backs when they line up opposite him. And I think he's going to have a big, productive career. Second round for me, I love him.
Pete, he's that type of guy that if you're a corner, corners never talk about backing down to anyone because corners are just like sprinters. They'll get into those blocks and talk trash, just like wide receivers will. But the truth of the matter is, if you're supposed to line up 7 yards off of Tae Kwon Thornton, you'll find your way to 8.5 to give him a little extra room because of that 4.28 speed. And it's something about the state of Texas because all those guys we saw running at the Combine, some of the fastest times came from those Texas guys. You remember, Woolen from UTSA, the corner. He ran 4.23. So here's the thing I really like about Tae Kwon Thornton, though. It's not just the speed. Pete talked about what he did in the West Virginia game. You will watch him set people up well coming off the line of scrimmage, a hesitation step here, a head nod there, using his little bit of wily, veteran stuff out there, as well as his speed to give himself a little bit more of an advantage. And he's a hands catcher. Most of the balls are caught with the hands. He's not cradling them, so you're not getting them jostled when you're getting hit. He's going up and snatching the ball out of the air. He's a much more polished receiver than I expected when I turned on the tape. I thought he was just a blazer. I was way wrong on that. I think this guy has a chance to be special, especially when he adds the weight that Pete talked about.
I always say I think there's something special in the water in Texas, the way that they just breed athletes out there, and you find so much success there. Last but not least, we're going to chat about Goedeke from Western Michigan. He made the All-MAC first team this season. So why does he deserve some more love, Pete?
Well, everybody's talking about the left tackle on his team, and he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I got tipped off to this by a scout that I respect greatly and said, hey, go back and watch the right tackle, and that would be Goedeke. And I said, okay. I went back and watched about 4 or 5 of his games, and I came away from it and I said, wow, he's right. He's a tough, nasty player. He played right tackle. Some people think he can slide inside and become a guard. I think he's going to be a really good right tackle. I think he stays there. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's one of the better offensive linemen in this draft class. He had some injury issues late in the season. I think he had an injury issue down at the Senior Bowl. But he's a good player. And when this guy tipped me off to it, I thanked him because he's spot on. He's going to be a productive NFL offensive lineman for a long time.
Yeah, how about Central Michigan? Bernard Ryman playing left tackle out of Austria, who's getting a lot of the attention that you noted, Pete. And this young man, Goedeke, the right tackle. Talk about an imposing forward wall running offense in the MAC. But when you watch Goedeke and watch him play, he's got 2 things that jump out to me. One, he wants to be a bully. He wants to beat you up on every snap. And he wants to stay attached to you in blocking. And if it says take him over the sideline till the whistle's done, he wants to take you over and introduce you to the water cooler. If you want to go down and try and burrow, he wants to come on top of you and bury you that way. Plus, his footwork is really good. When I watched him get to the outside, pull, or come down the line of scrimmage, his ability to flip his hips and get his feet aligned and get those hands out there, punch, and then turn his hips towards the sideline to keep the defender walled off, pretty special. So I agree with you totally. I think he's a guy who'll push to be a starting right tackle immediately in the NFL, and he goes to a team that needs him at guard. He can hold up at guard and play there as well. And that's what it's about in the league nowadays. It's versatility for these offensive linemen. You're going to dress 7, 8 tops for a game. How many positions can you play in case you have injuries up front where they have to mix and match and fill? Luke Goedeke gives you that type of versatility to play guard and tackle. So you want to give him a jersey on Sunday and say, be ready to go, young man. I like his abilities.
Goedeke, of course, out of Central Michigan. Excuse me from before, I said Western Michigan, so I want to make sure that I get that correct. You guys have been incredible this entire time. Pete, Charles, thank you so much for joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. We're excited to see where these players end up. Now, we're going to do a quick little recap. If you missed any of the action, of course, you can find the article on cbssports.com. Prisco's better than team. Here you see some of the offensive players that we went through, including Jalen Tolbert, the wide receiver, and also Zach Tom, a player we haven't really talked about, but you can find more information on him out of Wake Forest in the article. Taking a look at some of those defensive players as well. And Asamoah, they couldn't say enough good things about Brian outside of OU, the linebacker there. Pete very high up on him, and the list goes on and on. So make sure you go check that out on cbssports.com.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.